Arguments for both sides. If you have a large range, you can keep somebody in that role for a long period of time, or if you have a short range, you motivate them to try to take other positions.
Some of this discussion started when we were talking about unaffiliated. We still had steps back then. And several great conversations about that. We don't have steps anymore in the unaffiliated. So now it's just COLA. It's just pure COLA. We don't get their 2.5% increases every other year in addition to COLA.
So if I came in and I became something,
$75,000.
everything is just cost of living.
You get a cost of living.
There's no merit raise. If I'm the best guy in the department, life sucks to life.
No bonus?
Nothing's performance-based, right?
Nothing's performance-based.
When did you do away with steps? Did we do away with steps?
Last year.
Last year.
That's for everybody?
For the unaffiliated, so those who are not in a union.
Well, the column here says steps.
Some towns might have steps.
That's on this,
Yeah.
The work had already been done on this, and I didn't.
So you just cross that out.
You can.
That's
So-
non-union or unaffiliated?
Unaffiliated, yeah. So really, in terms of the way the unaffiliated increases were approved this year, everybody for the most part ended up with the same like percent increase in their salary. If this was the year that you were supposed to get a step, that your increase was considered your step. If not, it was a COLA. And then there were a few employees in the group that did not take any increase this year, just took added percent increase that everyone else received in the 401 plan. So that was just how it was passed for this year.
That's confusing, right? And part of that is because they get their steps, they used to get their steps on their anniversary day, correct? Instead of the beginning of the fiscal year, the unaffiliated.
The which ones? Affiliated?
Unaffiliated.
Unaffiliated.
We're only talking
This
about
is only
we can't
unaffiliated.
do anything about unit contracts.
Okay.
That's a separate issue, right?
It was because the employees received a salary increase and a COLA last fiscal year, so this fiscal year they said, okay, we won't take any increase to our salary, but give us the 2% in the 401.
And that was a transition from the old
We're
plan to the new plan.
We're just
and
transitioning out
it's
of it, and some people had
less than
already received
perfect.
theirs. Half the people did, half the people didn't, again, because of the way that steps were done in that particular group, and other groups it's done at the beginning of the year. So we're transitioning out of the steps, and
So what we gave back, I want to understand it. We did away with the step, which was 2% or 2.5%. 2.5%. And we put 2.5% in the 401k. 2. Okay, so that's tax deductible money for the town. Am I overthinking this?
I don't know.
When we contribute to 401ks? It's probably not a municipal rule. So so it was 2.5% for a step, and we put 2% in the 401k. So the town reduced its cost by 0.5% for salaries.
Generally, that's the way to think of it. We also need to increase our contributions to the health insurance, to the pension plans. That was woefully under where our salaries are right where they should be, and we just heard the message. We wanted to get out of steps, and that's how we were able to.
Did we save any money though? The taxpayer hat's on. Did we save any money by doing this for the taxpayers? That's the end goal.
Well, actually, so yes, because if employees were still getting the 2.5% step plus a 2% COLA, that would be a 4.5% increase. So everyone received a 2% increase. If it was considered your step year, it was said that is your step. So your step was 2%, but you did not receive a COLA.
But we added more to the 401k.
No, not for all employees. The employees that had the additional 2% to the 401k did not receive any salary increase, 0 salary increase. Rather than a salary increase, the money went to the 401.
And how easy was this to negotiate? Did you have to negotiate it, or did you just say, this is the deal? Because it's not a union.
It's not a lawyer negotiation. It's sitting down with Anna and some of the to Joe and some of the leaders of that,
Right.
that group, spokesmen, and try to work out something where we're not, listen, we don't want to create a union for this group.
Right, I understand.
We also want to, there are, everyone's a valued employee, but these are the leaders of the valued employees. And
Right.
we certainly have a lot of inherent
Value.
intelligence here that we don't want to just lose because we struggled with how we were going to do it. We struggled for a while on how we were going to do it, but we got it done.
Sounds to me like the years that I've been here, there's been a lot of talk about why are we giving them 2 steps and now we're gonna give them 1, and it sounds like that's what we've asked and that's what they want, and it sounds to me like you've negotiated or arranged a good
Yeah, it's not
position.
negotiations.
Right. Yes. Any other questions for the wages and benefits, knowing that we will bring this back up after everybody's got time to chew on the data? Hearing none, we will close new business and we will move on to old business, which is reviewing our action item list to see if there's, I don't think there's anything specific we wanted to talk about. Did you give us a copy of it, or?
It was in your packets, yes.
There it is. All right. So study of wage and benefits, we're gonna continue that into October. September, October, the budget negotiations, we're gonna go to the Board of Ed's meeting in October, so we're gonna get a date for that one. Acquisition plan, we talked about that tonight, so that's a September activity. October, list of policies and procedures, so Camille was gonna meet with you to talk about policies and procedures?
So yes, Camille and I met about a few weeks ago, and so, what it was agreed on is I would come up with a table of contents, and we would meet to discuss the table of contents and decide how, to go about getting all the policies done. So, unfortunately, the meeting was canceled. However, I did provide Camille with the table of contents, so we'll have to set up another agreed-upon time to either meet or discuss it over the phone. But I think, we have a good place to start, and it's manageable to get it accomplished over the next hopefully the next year.
So halfway through the conversations about the purchasing policy, Mark said that the Board of Selectmen owns all policies and procedures. So do we have to vet this through them? Speak of the devil?
Well, what I would do is when we get it done, just provide them with a copy and go before them for them to,
Policies and procedures.
just
Halfway through the
approve it.
purchase, I just catch and mark up to what I
Oh,
just said.
sorry.
Halfway through the purchasing policy, you mentioned that Board of Selectmen actually owns all procedures and policies for the town. So if Camille and Anna's working on a list of policies to be created, updated, or just basically maintained, does that want to bounce through the Board of Selectmen to say, yes, we agree that these are policies and procedures that we want to create?
You're talking specifically finance procedures, correct?
Yes.
Not how we operate the Smith Harris House?
I haven't seen the list. I
they're
suspect that they're
finance.
all going to be financial. I can only hope that that's what they are.
So, if I could ask, the town fund balance policy, the document that you provided
Mhm.
to us recently, Anna, it seems to have been generated by Board of Finance 10 years ago, and also seems to be within the purview of their responsibilities as I see it written. So, for example, that one at least looks like it's a Board of Finance generated document, and
But is that appropriate?
Um,
Just because it was, doesn't mean it should, right?
yeah, although there is reference to the town charter and how we have to have a balanced budget, and state statute similar. So, in theory, I guess it could flow into that
Yeah,
rubric.
that's, that policy is part of the, the table of contents that I did come up with. And when I read through that policy, as I go through this, I would do some updates to that policy.
Yeah, I mean, that's a separate issue, and
Yeah.
I agree with you, and I think that's
Yeah.
a separate issue. But as
Right.
far as who has responsibility for what, this might be an example of something that falls within the purview of Board of Finance. Whereas, for example, purchasing policy is a Board of Selectmen ultimately passing it. However, there's been that input by Board of Finance, department
Right.
heads, and others who have had a hand in writing it, et cetera, et cetera. So a different set of needs there. But this is a purely financial issue, I think. But you could have Board of
Well, I
Selectmen
think
input.
The
I don't
first,
know.
the
I'm
first
just-
step is like, okay, we'll agree on, okay, yeah, this looks like where we should go and move forward with drafting the policies. Once the policies are all complete, then I think at that point in time, we can, get through the, final approval, how that should be accomplished.
Mm.
The first part is to get them done.
Okay.
I guess my point would just be, in getting them done, you'll need to know who does what and who's responsible for what, because that does,
Yeah,
that's, if you're creating a policy, it's good to know in whose hands should this be happening,
Yes.
or being created, so.
And if the Board of Selectmen owns all the policies, and we say, you know what, we need these 6 policies, then although we could have our priorities for what we think we need to go
Mm.
first, if they own the list, then I would think that they would want to voice their opinion as well.
Yeah.
That's all, just trying to keep everybody in the conversation. Okay. Other than that, next month, I guess we're going to see a report on the unassigned fund balance, and quarterly after that. Anything else on this list that we want to discuss tonight?
Oh, and then I'll just point out, you'll see at the bottom, I put completed action item list. So, for example, last month,
good.
we had the presentation on the fire study, so that's
Right.
like a completed
That's
item.
done.
So I just started a list with that, and I just thought at the end of every year, give you a copy of it.
I like it.
Because
Yeah.
I'm like, I said to Bill, if we keep adding to the list and don't take off things that are done, with all due respect, it's gonna become unmanageable. So I
Yes.
think to do it that way makes it more manageable, so.
Yeah.
And at some point, we're
It's
going to
my
want to make this a
suggestion.
top 10 list or something so that we could have something that we can just focus on. But right now, we're doing a lot of housekeeping, so this is all good. Bringing us into the modern times. Okay. Any more discussion?
Let's see.
So can we briefly discuss the purchasing policy that was discussed at the, and
Yeah.
you could do that, I mean,
Yeah.
but I just think it bears mentioning to the board.
Sure, absolutely, thanks. Yeah, I was gonna pop in with a point or two on that. So at the last Board of Selectmen meeting, the policy was initially presented, we'll say, and I think it was well received. There are just a couple of changes that were recommended. Lisa also came to the meeting and talked about local preference rules, or possibility, having something like that in the policy. The focus of Board of Selectmen's concern seemed to be a little bit about Board of Education and spending efforts, involving Board of Ed, or for the benefit of Board of Ed and of the East Lyme schools. So I've actually, since that meeting, which was last Wednesday, I've taken the document and made some edits, that seemed to be, everyone seemed to be on board about, and they're pretty de minimis, but, and I futzed with the language a little bit on the Board of Ed issue. and did some other like housekeeping while I was at it, you know, like once
So
it starts, you can't stop.
Do you have that?
Specifically, what part of the
Okay,
Board of Ed?
so,
Can you send that to me tomorrow?
yes, I've just sent it, a day ago to, actually it was last night, to Mark Salerno. And so, he may actually just be sending that to you as well for your thoughts. So.
They incorporated Paul's comments, right?
Yes,
Paul
I
Daigle's?
did.
Yeah,
He
okay.
wanted, certain references to services plus items in a section. He also wanted to look at that, initial language of Board of Ed. So I can explain that briefly if you have a minute here. The beginning of the policy, has a section called, purpose and adoption. So it's kind of, the policy doesn't fall from the sky. It's here because we have, the town charter and ordinances, and it has a purpose, and that's stated. And the area in which the policy encompasses, like what the boards and commissions, it does not, excludes the Board of Education. They have their own ability to purchase on their own at their discretion. That's by state law, so that's not a surprise. But what you see in these policies, which are town side within the Connecticut policies we've examined, municipal policies, there is often a little nudging, we'll say, to a Board of Education. Well, try to adopt the policies and maybe make them amenable to your needs. I've seen everything from the nudge to the push in way. So I had come up with this initial paragraph 2 under subsection 1, which talks about capital projects, et cetera, et cetera. So in revamping it, it's just a little bit of a clarification where there are where basically, in fact, I can probably read that to you because I have it here in my scribbles. So basically, the new section will read something like this, depending on how the Board of Selectmen receive it. Procurement undertaken by the town on behalf of and for the benefit of East Lyme schools shall proceed in accordance with the provisions of this policy. Such procurement includes capital expenditures and purchasing using any appropriations requiring a town meeting. So we kind of cover our universe of where it comes up. But, in reality, we can't force that issue when they're doing their own purchasing and they have their own discretion. But when we have our hands in something and then that's a whole different universe. So this addresses that. I took out my sentence because Paul didn't like it, I guess, about recommending that the Board of Ed adhere, to applicable provisions in the absence of their own. But it's something that could be in there and not in there. It's just, again, a little nudge. I've seen stronger language, but it's not a bad idea also. But for now, I just revamped this to just be a little bit crisper about the appropriations requirement of the town meeting.
So if this document's adopted, making changes to it will be pretty simple because it's just a policy, or procedure, so the town, the selectmen just have to.
They can, Board of Selectmen can make their changes, anything really substantive, such as a threshold change, and that's in this, again, section 1 is a good section to read because it gives you the guts of what the policy's all about and where it comes from and so forth. So any amendments that are substantive can go through that same process where the finance director, Board of Selectmen, we can have some input, but ultimately they make the changes. You make amendments in the same fashion that you've created the document, so there's no mystery.
You could send that over to me, and if it could be like a Word document, I don't know if that's what you just said.
Yes.
We might fix it we might have all the changes, and I can, if
Right.
we're gonna go to public hearing, I need to have the ability to make the move on that.
Right.
I don't think there'd be any substantive
Yes.
changes, that you guys
Right.
did a great job.
Thanks.
Thank you for doing it, and I see it being moved on.
Yeah.
Yeah, the reason why I asked my question is because during the process, somewhere during the last year, Jeff had said he would like to see a copy of it, and maybe it is something he would like to incorporate. And in the event that they do incorporate it, then it's easy to put back in those stronger words as
Yeah.
opposed to
They
softer
do have a
words.
public, they do have a purchasing policy Board of Ed, they've seen what we're doing already, they were very interested in taking a look
We
at it.
could have borrowed theirs.
Adapting it, so.
Right, right. I know.
Okay,
I know.
So are you keeping a list of ladder changes for the next rev? I'm assuming you are, because we already talked about the local bidders. We weren't prepared to go forward with it right now.
Right,
there
but
was
that
enough-
is definitely something that I think in chapter 2 of this.
Right, but are we keeping there was couple other items that came up that we said, next rev, let's take a look at that.
Yeah, that's, I mean, and that, we can go back to the minutes of that too, of the meeting, if there's other items.
Because I don't remember all of them.
Yeah.
Some were
Yeah.
brought up by other folks,
Well,
but it would
some
be
of them-
worthwhile to keep track of
Yes,
them.
and some I discussed this maybe 60 seconds with Anna. Some involve accounting that Paul was actually discussing, Mr. Daigle was
Right,
discussing.
those were some good things.
They were good things, but they have to be held back a little bit right now until maybe
Right.
that accounting system
That's-
changes. But the
But
section.
we don't want to lose them, is my
Right.
point.
There's a section on on-call bids and another section for open purchasing orders. And those are really good to have for a town our size. You know, gives us a little more flexibility.
Can I mention something real quick? Because
Yes,
I know I was
on-call
interested
bids.
in the on-call bids. The only thing is, I guess, from a technical perspective, you have from a local qualified contractor. Since maybe you're not using local contractors, you should remove that word
Yes, actually,
local.
that was the last minute change.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, because I
Right.
didn't want to confuse, since the topic came up, and now we've
Right.
pretty much addressed it, at least for this year, let's say, or whatever, 6 months, a year.
Right.
Yes, not to be confused, I omitted that,
Yeah.
correct.
I mean, on the on-call bids, is there a threshold? Because
Um,
it seems to be like,
these-
it's just
yeah.
it's small items, but I think
Right.
the small items should be capped
Right, but
at a
it's,
dollar value.
okay.
Yeah, good point.
Comes under a larger section, which is exceptions. So it can fall within a large,
Right, even if it's an
yeah.
exception, I think we need to have a cap on that exception.
I don't know, it's something the committee hadn't really,
well, we did talk
discussed.
about it when we talked to the department heads, and they said that some of the things that fall in that category, if I believe, are like paving that comes into $900,000 or something.
Right.
It's a huge.
It can be large.
Yeah, but those things are not on-call bids. That's a state bid process that the state goes out and bids all of these contractors and has already established a low rate. We're talking about guys that we're hiring. Here, this is the town may obtain construction other services by using. It's the way that I interpret this is different than what the state's doing. And I agree with you. We don't need to go out and we have a $900,000 contract to pave the road, Main Street, for example. We're not going to get involved. But I want to make sure there's not a.
As far as when you have exceptions to your thresholds, then you are in another universe. You're not in the typical procedures, so it would be very contradictory if you had, in my mind, if you had some dollar limit on that,
You brought up a good example of this at the meeting, Mark. You talked about an HVAC contractor. I think you brought it up, or maybe Paul did, and said, on winter, right, the boiler fails or something, and we need to have somebody on call that we would come in, and that's what that intention of that
Yeah.
language was.
Mm-hmm.
But your question, Jason, is should we cap that amount, is what I'm hearing. But that is the characterization of what the on-call bid is, or on-call
Well, I mean, that makes
contractor.
sense, but the one that I'm reading is describing construction services by using drainage, trucking, tree trimming, scrap metal, earthwork, local qualified contractors. So
Yeah,
it's
that's- Maybe that's what he was talking about, was a hurricane or something, where there was some massive need to call in tree trimmers and stuff like that. I know we talked about it.
Excavation, I think, is one of them, right?
Yes.
So if we have an excavator, we go out to bid, we have the on-call excavator, and then it could be water main breaks beyond our scope, or building a park. We literally used, we contract the thing ourselves, so we probably used, I don't know what we did, but I think we probably used the on-call bid for some of that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I know you did, and that would be a great, there was a lot of earthwork there. That probably would have been something that, within this purchasing policy, I think probably should have went out to bid, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
I know the amount of hours that they spent down there were months.
We
They
didn't
were
bid
doing
that
it.
out?
No, that's what he says. I don't.
I don't know, I think we did, I don't know, or we used the on-call bid. And we had a good price from a contractor that charged us very little to build that park. I
So-
don't know.
So we had an hourly rate that was predetermined, and then we just used that to do the park.
I don't know,
I think it's something we should look into. If you don't know, it was just. I mean, I was imagining that would be $100,000, $200,000 project.
It wasn't. I mean, total with the stone and all that, but if you're talking just excavation, under 100. If you're talking about the on-call for the excavation, it was well under.
I mean, I think if it was over 10, it should have went out to bid. Again, I'm
That's why we're
I'm talking
developing a
about this
policy.
uneducatedly. I'm just, this is the first that I'm aware of it, so
Yeah,
I'm,
yeah.
Well, that's exactly why we need a policy.
You and I and Bill can sit down and discover how we did that.
or just,
But if-
you just, let us know how,
But more importantly than that, I think, is that if the policy doesn't address that type of situation, where we're using an on-call bidder in a situation where we should go out for quote, if the policy doesn't talk about that type of situation, then there's some room for improvement.
Mhm.
But the reason why I asked about how easy is it to correct this document is because it's not perfect. It won't be perfect for several edits,
Mhm.
but it would be nice to get it on the floor and get people to use it and get people to give it about what works and what doesn't work. And then 6 months from now or something, tweak it.
I guess a year to get to here.
Yeah.
Let's not open it up for 6 months.
Let's not get into why it took a year to get here. It's a
No,
different
let's
conversation for a different day.
I think the policy well covers the common issues and procurement for a municipality. I mean, it doesn't touch on every possibility. And I've only seen a couple of towns that have gone, I'll say, almost over the top, where they incorporate a capital asset plan, disposition of surplus property, all these other topics. But I think we've narrowed the world sufficiently so that we can, I think, within a certain number of months to a year, you can tell whether it's working, it's not, what might have to be shored up, and it might be what Jason has pointed out, whatever. So, but I having looked at a number of policies now, I really think we're on the right track,
Good plan,
so.
so we'll look at that.
Okay. Any other questions about our action item list or any other comments or?
Just one thing about grants. We had the grant writer thing on there. Grant writer, not sure where that.
It's still TBD. What's the best way to determine how we're gonna do
Yeah.
grants?
Okay. There's at
That's
least
a
one
good
little
thing.
development on that one. So I don't know about the grant writer situation per se, but I did venture to a CCM seminar on grant writing. Not because it was, I thought, also going to provide information on grant sourcing, sources of grants. I mean, just to get some information for the town. So in the process of doing that and realizing, I mean, actually, there's some good information that was provided, written information. The lecture focused more on the actual writing, which was tough to sit through. But long story short, there is Grant Finder tool that CCM has, and it's a great tool. I did ask for a whole seminar, and at first they were all gung-ho at CCM, but then when we got down to specifics, we have the Grant Finder tool, but they are going to give East Lyme, the ability to have a kind of one-on-one tutorial with whoever is interested within the town, which is great. So it doesn't last that long in time. It's under an hour, 20, 40 minutes total with the presentation and the questions, and it's like a webinar. So I think Mark might be, asking someone from Board of Ed to attend, as well as folks, department heads who do these, write these, because I was just, last year in that budget cycle, it occurred to me and to the rest of us that, maybe there are grants out there that we're not tapping into. And I guess this Grant Finder tool is pretty amazing in that it keeps you very up to date. You will get you'll get emails and so forth. So, a beginning point. But that was, as far as grants go, that's where we're at, unless you all have some other info about grant writer.
No, we'll go into that seminar.
Okay.
Set a date for that.
Okay, and I do have for on the town side and for Board of Ed, they gave me extra copies of the brochure, which tells you not only how to properly write grants, but also gives you some resources to look at for grant finding. So that would help Public Works or whomever. So I can pass those on.
So they're gonna set up a webinar, you're gonna publish the date that the webinar is, and anyone and everyone that's interested will attend.
Yeah, yes, I think so.
Cool.
I think once Mark knows, and I think that it's a San Francisco-based company that actually will produce the webinar for you some afternoon, right? I think that's how it's going. I was contacting Sandy in Mark's office.
Okay, any other conversation about the action item list?
I have one for, Lisa, if you know anything about is it number 1, the Board of Education permanent maintenance account? And you and I had gone to a meeting about that.
I think wasn't that sort of the genesis of the turf issue?
Yeah, I guess they were supposed to have an October meeting next, where there's someone, where Joe Bragaw and whoever else, and.
Oh, permanent maintenance.
Yes.
Maybe,
Sounds like
is
they
that
did.
integrating the facilities plans?
So I don't.
Integrating